The Galactic Overlords reign over countless systems, their vast empire stretching across the stars. Technologically superior to almost every species under their control, they rule through sheer domination, using fear as their most powerful weapon. Despite their advancements, their society is stagnant. They cling to old traditions, stuck in their ways, unwilling to evolve because they believe they don't need to. To them, all other species are beneath them, and their arrogance blinds them to the growing threats right under their noses. Their methods of control are brutal. Entire species have been enslaved, their worlds stripped of resources, and their cultures destroyed. The Overlords' grip tightens with each passing cycle, and their subjects are made to believe resistance is futile. Any hint of rebellion is swiftly crushed. They've perfected this system over millennia, always believing that their strength is unmatched. For a long time, this belief has gone unchallenged. But across their vast empire, in the shadowed corners of their controlled territories, whispers of defiance have started to spread. A network of resistance is forming, small, fragmented at first, but now growing bolder. There are rumors that these rebels are using advanced technology, weapons far beyond what their species should possess. The Overlords are puzzled. How could their primitive subjects acquire such sophisticated tools? They dismiss it at first, attributing the odd victories to luck or isolated incidents. Yet the whispers persist. These mysterious weapons appear more frequently, and rebel cells, once disorganized and easily defeated, are now launching coordinated strikes. Systems that were once firmly under Overlord control are starting to slip. They haven't pieced it together yet, but the Overlords are facing a new kind of threat, one they haven't prepared for. What the Overlords don't realize is that these weapons, these strategies, have been supplied by humanity. For centuries, humans have remained under the radar, watching and waiting. The Overlords, in their arrogance, never saw humanity as a threat. They viewed them as a primitive, inconsequential species, not worthy of concern. But humanity has been quietly advancing, growing stronger and smarter, observing the galaxy and its political tides. When the Overlords weren't looking, humanity began planting the seeds of rebellion. Humanity's involvement has been careful, almost surgical. They haven't revealed themselves openly, but instead have chosen to work through intermediaries, providing covert support to rebel factions. Human engineers, tacticians, and diplomats have been operating in secret, slipping into these occupied systems, teaching the oppressed how to fight back. The Overlords are still blind to the full extent of this, but their growing paranoia hints at their fear. They've noticed the pattern, how certain uprisings seem unusually well coordinated, how rebel factions possess tech that rivals their own in key skirmishes, but they don't yet know who is behind it. The Overlords remain confident that no force could truly challenge them, but their confidence is beginning to fray, and their fear is growing. Even they, in their complacency, cannot deny that something is shifting. And now, something bigger is on the horizon. In a remote sector of Overlord space, far from the core worlds but still within their dominion, a new threat has appeared. A lone human Dreadnought, the Vanguard, has crossed into their territory. Its presence, detected by long-range sensors, has set alarms ringing throughout the Overlord command structure. There are no communications, no demands, just the silent, steady approach of a ship far more powerful than anything the Overlords had anticipated. The Overlords are on edge. This can't be a coincidence. They've known for a while that humanity is no longer the backwater species they once thought, but the arrival of this ship raises questions they don't yet have answers for. Is this the start of something larger? A prelude to invasion? Their nerves are frayed, their once unshakable grip on power beginning to weaken. Tension is palpable. The Overlord High Command scrambles to make sense of the Vanguard's appearance, their minds racing to understand what this could mean. Is this ship merely a scouting force, or a symbol of something far more dangerous? They don't know, but they fear the worst. For the first time in a long while, the Overlords are nervous. The balance of power may be about to shift, and humanity stands at the center of that change. Captain Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, a grim expression on his face as he reviewed the mission details. Known for his strategic mind and calm under pressure, Hale had led countless successful operations, but this mission was different. Time was not on their side. The objective was clear: rescue Ambassador Larkin, a human diplomat who had been captured during a covert operation in Overlord territory. Larkin possessed vital intelligence about the rebel networks forming across the galaxy, intel that, if compromised, would unravel years of delicate planning and put thousands of lives at risk. Beside him, Lieutenant Zara Kane, the ship's tactical officer, monitored the systems. She was sharp, quick to adapt, and had an unmatched precision with weaponry. Her confidence, paired with the Vanguard's AI-enhanced targeting, made her an invaluable asset in combat. Commander Ethan Rise, second in command, managed the crew with a quiet efficiency, his loyalty to Hale unshakable. The Vanguard wasn't just any ship. It was the most advanced dreadnought humanity had ever built. Equipped with stealth technology, powerful AI-driven systems, and experimental weapons designed to outmatch anything the Overlords could throw at them. But this wasn't an assault. They couldn't risk open conflict yet. Their mission was precise and covert. A surgical extraction of Larkin from one of the Overlord's most fortified prison planets. Any misstep could ignite a war they weren't ready to fight. As the Vanguard slipped into Overlord territory, the ship's stealth systems activated. To any outside observer, they were nothing more than a faint blip, nearly invisible to most detection grids. But the Overlords weren't easily fooled. Their long-range sensors detected the anomaly, and alarm bells rang in their command centers. Word spread quickly. A human dreadnought had entered their space. Panic set in as they scrambled to assess the situation. Was this the vanguard of a full-scale invasion? On board the Vanguard, the atmosphere was tense. Every crew member knew the stakes, and the silence on the bridge was only broken by the soft hum of the ship's systems. Captain Hale issued commands with quiet precision, ensuring they avoided any direct engagements. The last thing they needed was to trigger an all-out war before they could complete the mission. The tension mounted as they approached the prison planet, a bleak, heavily fortified world on the fringes of Overlord territory. Its surface was scarred with massive defense installations, patrolled by swarms of automated drones and heavily armed ground forces. It was a fortress designed to hold the most dangerous enemies of the Empire, and getting in, or out, was no small feat. In a secure room aboard the Vanguard, the infiltration team was ready. Led by Lieutenant Kane, they had been specially trained for missions like this. The squad was outfitted with cutting-edge exosuits, which enhanced their strength and agility, making them nearly invisible to most standard detection systems. Each member carried advanced weaponry and tools, their gear designed for swift, silent operations. They would deploy via a stealth shuttle, slipping past planetary defenses under the cover of darkness. Hale watched the operation unfold from the bridge. The Vanguard would remain in high orbit, ready to provide cover if things went wrong. But this mission wasn't about brute force. It was about precision, speed, and getting out before the Overlords could mobilize their full might. As the infiltration team descended, the Overlord forces on the planet were none the wiser. Their attention focused on the approaching Dreadnought. They were preparing for a massive assault, not expecting a covert strike at the heart of their prison. The team landed without incident, moving swiftly through the shadows, bypassing security checkpoints with ease. Inside the prison, Ambassador Larkin was being held in a high-security cell, his capture unknown to most of the galaxy. The Overlords had hoped to break him, extract the valuable information he carried. But time was running out for them. The infiltration team breached the facility's perimeter and began cutting their way through the defenses. They worked with cold efficiency, neutralizing guards and disabling security systems as they advanced toward Larkin's location. Meanwhile, in Orbai, the Vanguard monitored every move. Hale kept a close eye on the Overlord fleet movements. Already, ships were beginning to mobilize. The Overlords were scrambling, their panic growing as they tried to anticipate what humanity was planning. They had no idea that their prize captive was about to be ripped from their grasp. Time was running short. The infiltration team reached Larkin's cell, and within moments, the diplomat was freed. He looked worse for wear but was still sharp, immediately recognizing the gravity of the situation. They couldn't linger. As they began their extraction, the Overlord forces started to catch on. Security systems were going offline, and guard rotations were missed. The alarm was raised. Back on the Vanguard, Captain Hale knew the clock was ticking. They had to pull the team out before the Overlord fleet could box them in. Kane and her team moved quickly, retracing their steps and avoiding the rising alert levels as best they could. But now the Overlords were on high alert, and the once silent facility was buzzing with activity. The team reached their extraction point just as the Overlord forces began closing in. Hale gave the order. The Vanguard shifted into position, its advanced targeting systems locking onto the prison's defense installations. In a matter of seconds, precision strikes took out key defenses, creating the opening the infiltration team needed to make their escape. The shuttle raced back to the Dreadnought, with Overlord ships now converging on their location. The Vanguard's engines roared to life as the crew prepared to make a swift exit. They had Larkin, but now they needed to get out before the Overlords could bring the full weight of their fleet down on them. With the team safely aboard, the Vanguard accelerated toward the edge of the system, slipping back into stealth mode just as Overlord forces arrived. The Overlords, panicking and confused, could only watch as the Dreadnought disappeared from their scanners. Hale and his crew had done it. The mission was a success, but the storm they had just ignited was only beginning. The Overlord High Command was in chaos. The moment the Vanguard was detected entering their territory, fear gripped their top leaders. In the war rooms of their capital planet, alarms blared and screens displayed the Dreadnought's path. They didn't see it for what it was, a lone human ship on a rescue mission. Instead, their analysts jumped to a conclusion that had haunted them for decades. This was it, the first strike of a full-scale human invasion. Overlord Commander Zarak stood at the center of the command chamber, his mind racing. He had always been skeptical of the reports about humanity, dismissing them as exaggerations. The Overlords had ruled the galaxy for millennia, their technology unmatched, their control absolute. But now, staring at the image of the Vanguard on the screen, Zarak's confidence wavered. How had humanity advanced so quickly? Why hadn't he noticed sooner? For years they had assumed the humans were insignificant, a primitive race of limited reach. Now it seemed they had made a grave miscalculation. Zarak's advisors were no better, each one panicking, demanding immediate action. Mobilize the fleets, they urged. We must defend the core worlds. Their fear was palpable, and it fed into Zarak's own growing sense of unease. They had underestimated humanity for far too long, and now it was too late to prepare. He had to act fast, but the real question was, what exactly were they facing? Was the Vanguard merely a scout or the vanguard of a much larger invasion force? Driven by fear, the Overlords began mobilizing their fleets at an unprecedented rate. Every available ship was called to action, and in their rush, they accelerated troop deployments to what they believed were key strategic systems, fortifying planets close to the human ship's trajectory. They believed they could intercept and neutralize the threat before it escalated. But in their haste, they made critical errors. By pulling forces from other regions to concentrate near the potential invasion points, they left vast swathes of their empire vulnerable. Systems that had long been oppressed, barely holding on to hope, saw a sudden opportunity. As Overlord troops thinned out, these species, many of whom had been waiting for the right moment, began to stir. The Overlords had maintained control for so long by projecting an image of invincibility. Now, that image was cracking. Rebel cells that had been operating in secret for years started receiving reports of the human Dreadnought. To them, it was clear. Humanity had come to liberate them. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Coordinated uprisings began to break out across the galaxy. From the farthest reaches of Overlord space to systems just beyond their core worlds. In a matter of days, planets that had been under Overlord rule for centuries exploded into revolt, their people taking up arms, seizing control of local garrisons, and declaring their freedom. Overlord Commander Zarak struggled to maintain order. Messages flooded in from every corner of the Empire. Requests for reinforcements, reports of entire star systems falling into chaos. He tried to coordinate a response, but the situation was spiraling out of control far faster than anyone had anticipated. The Overlord's fear-based control was unraveling, and with each new rebellion, more systems joined the cause, emboldened by the apparent human intervention. As the rebellion spread, the Overlords' paranoia deepened. They had always suspected that humanity was involved in the underground resistance movements, but now they were certain. They believed this was the culmination of centuries of plotting, an elaborate scheme by the humans to bring down their empire from within. Jurok and his advisors imagined that humanity had spent years infiltrating their systems, seeding rebellion in the hearts of their subjects. But they were wrong. The humans had merely provided support when they could, and the arrival of the vanguard was little more than a coincidence. Still, in their fear, the Overlords saw humanity's hand in every uprising, every act of defiance. Jurok could feel the empire slipping through his fingers. What had started as a single ship crossing into their space had ignited a firestorm of rebellion that now threatened to consume the entire Overlord regime. The very systems they had believed would hold the line were crumbling from within, as oppressed species rose up and fought back with a fury born of centuries of subjugation. The Dreadnought was gone, having completed its mission and vanished back into the shadows. But its presence lingered like a specter, haunting the Overlords, driving their decisions deeper into panic. They scrambled to find humanity's next move, but it was the uprisings, not the humans, that were tearing their empire apart. Each passing hour brought more reports of revolts, more systems declaring independence. Jurok realized they had overreacted. Their misinterpretation of the Vanguard's arrival had set into motion a chain of events that couldn't be stopped. The rebellion they feared was happening, not because humanity had launched an invasion, but because the Overlords had let their fear of humanity blind them to the cracks in their own empire. Now, the Overlords' greatest fear wasn't just humanity, it was the realization that their once unchallenged rule was crumbling from within. The human infiltration team moved swiftly, their exosuits shimmering in the dim light of the prison corridors. Behind them, Ambassador Larkin limped along, his once proud form battered from weeks of captivity. The extraction had gone smoothly until they reached the outer perimeter, where a squad of Overlord soldiers was waiting. The silent approach gave way to chaos as both sides opened fire. The Overlords were relentless, their energy weapons cutting through the air, but the human team's advanced tech held the line. Lieutenant Kane led the counterattack with precision, her squad using their superior agility and firepower to neutralize the enemy. Each movement was calculated, no wasted effort, no hesitation. They cut through the Overlord defenses, but the clock was ticking. The Vanguard, now in low orbit, began engaging the planet's surface defenses, raining down precise strikes to clear the team's path to extraction. With the prison's defensive grid faltering, the team made a break for the extraction point. Kane barked orders, urging them forward as the firefight raged behind them. Every second felt like an eternity, but finally the shuttle appeared. They boarded, barely escaping as the last wave of Overlord reinforcements stormed into view. The Vanguard, looming in the upper atmosphere, provided cover with a final barrage, neutralizing the threat and allowing the shuttle to break free of the planet's gravity well. As Vanguard began its strategic retreat, Captain Hale monitored the situation closely. The Dreadnought stealth systems were re-engaged, but Overlord fleets were already mobilizing to intercept. Several enemy ships moved to cut off their escape, but the Dreadnought's superior AI-guided systems easily outmaneuvered them. Lieutenant Zara Kane remained focused, using the Vanguard's experimental weapons to disable enemy ships without engaging in a full-scale battle. Every move was calculated to ensure they left an unmistakable mark but avoided direct confrontation. Despite the Overlord's best efforts, the Vanguard slipped out of their territory, disappearing back into the void. In its wake, the Overlord command was left in disarray. Panic spread throughout the Empire as rumors of the Dreadnought's power grew. The prison world had been left in ruins, its garrison shattered, and the once feared Overlord military humiliated by the daring human strike. Across the galaxy, news of the rebellion continued to spread. The oppressed species saw the human Dreadnought as a beacon of hope, a sign that the Overlords were no longer untouchable. Uprisings intensified, and even systems that had been loyal to the Overlords began questioning their place in the crumbling regime. Commander Zarok, back in his command center, was left to contemplate the gravity of what had just transpired. They had underestimated humanity for too long, and now their empire teetered on the brink of collapse. Jarak stood in the war room, surrounded by advisors who now spoke only in hushed tones. He could feel the weight of their defeat hanging over them, heavier than any physical blow. The humans had played them, had used their arrogance against them. The overlords had ruled through fear and oppression for millennia, but now that fear was turning inward. Jarak knew that it wasn't just the Dreadnought that had shaken their power. It was the idea of humanity. The humans had become a symbol, and that symbol was far more dangerous than any ship or weapon. As rebellion surged, Jarak realized the overlords had been undone not by a grand invasion, but by their own hubris and fear. They had created enemies across the stars, and now those enemies were rising up, emboldened by the mere appearance of humanity's strength. The cracks in their empire had been growing for years, but now those cracks were spreading faster than they could repair them. Jarak stared out into the darkness of space, knowing that the days of overlord supremacy were numbered. Aboard the Vanguard, the atmosphere was more subdued. The crew had succeeded in their mission, and Ambassador Larkin was safe in the medical bay. But Captain Hale knew this victory came with larger consequences. The Dreadnought had done more than rescue one diplomat. It had sparked a galaxy-wide movement. Hale stood at the bridge, his hands resting on the control panel, watching the stars blur by as the Vanguard cruised through the edge of Overlord space. He exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Kane, both of them fully aware that the rescue had been just the beginning. The overlords were reeling, but they wouldn't stay on the defensive for long. Humanity had made its presence known, and there would be no going back to the shadows. Hale allowed himself a moment of reflection. The seeds of war had been sown, and whether humanity was ready or not, the galaxy was changing. As the Vanguard continued its journey back to human space, Captain Hale looked ahead with steely resolve. The overlords were powerful, but their arrogance had blinded them to the shifting tide. Humanity hadn't intended to start a war, but now they would be ready to finish it. The era of the overlords was coming to an end, and the galaxy's future, whatever it held, would be decided by those bold enough to seize it.